Since the sail is computer designed, we're only going to baste together and sew the bottom two panels for this sail and then apply the patches along the clew and the tack. There's no need to fight the entire full-size sail. Do it in sections and it makes it a lot easier for sewing these patch assemblies together to the corners. Our sail designer will pre-cut these patches with the plotter, then he'll staple them together at the corner to show the exact order that they go in. Should you mix up the patches, they are also numbered and you can follow the written instructions to determine the order that they go back into. As you can see here, they're numbered and they also contain a letter. That letter is T for tack. We'll baste these patches together using the double-sided tape that again is provided in the kit. The double-sided tape works great to baste patches together, but you could also use the Super 77 spray adhesive by 3M. We'll show that later on. You want to baste the entire patch assembly so that everything lays flat. So you notice each one of these patches have basting tape applied. Then we'll baste them to the larger patch. As you can see, Deb's peeling off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and then carefully baste them to the larger patch. Each successive patch will get smaller. The larger patch will be on top when we flip the panel over and baste it to the sail. We'll not show the whole process of basting each one of these patches to the assembly. Here we are with the final patch on that assembly. Once that patch is down, then we'll take double-sided tape and apply the double-sided tape to the entire assembly so that we can baste it to the sail. As you can see in the video, we've applied a lot of double-sided tape down to this patch assembly so that it stays in place. You want to make sure the entire assembly is as flat as possible when you baste it to this tack corner. You'll do that with all the patch assemblies. In order to help guide our sewing, we'll mark each one of these patch assemblies with a pencil. We hold the sail up to a light so that we can see the patches underneath this assembly, and then just simply mark it with a pencil so that you can be guided when you sew each one of the edges of these patches that are hidden under the larger patch. We're sewing with a zigzag. You'll see that when Deb gets to a corner, she buries her needle and rotates the fabric around, then continues to sew. Even though the ultra-feed sewing machine doesn't have a huge throat space, you can still get fairly large sails in here quite nicely. Here we are sewing the second run of zigzag stitches, following those pencil lines. It's important to avoid needle deflection issues. You can see how Deb turns the corner carefully so that she doesn't bend her needle and then hit some metal down below in the sewing machine. Here we are working on that outer patch. We didn't show the entire assembly sewing, but you can see here that she folds the patch to get it underneath the throat of the sewing machine. The ultra-feed sewing machine works great for sails. And again, here you can see her getting close to a corner. She pivots carefully, being sure that the needle does not deflect. And that's all there is to that patch assembly. This is the bottom side. Scrolling or rolling up the sail like this makes it possible for you to feed large assemblies through the throat of the sewing machine, and it also enables you to feed the material through the sewing machine accurately. As we discussed earlier, we're going to show you how to use the 3M Super 77 spray adhesive to glue patch assemblies together. This is the glue patch assembly, and we're taking it to a makeshift cardboard box that helps prevent the glue from spreading all over the loft.
It has a square. When you see a square like that, that means that the patch has been upside down. See how this number is at the top and then the 6. The little square tells you that this one's going to be upside down to that one when it gets put on here.
To help conserve fabric when nesting these panels on the plotter, some patches are turned upside down. They'll have that square. The written instructions that accommodate your kit will say more about that. We now take that spray adhesive and spray it onto the back side of each one of these patch assemblies. Or if your patch has a square, we spray it on the opposite side. In our loft we use the spray adhesive rather than the double-sided tape because it's a little bit quicker and it also results in flatter patch assemblies. Before we baste the large patch here onto this assembly, we want to install a ring with webbing. That's how this clue patch assembly was designed. So we'll take that stainless steel ring to the corner of this clue assembly and draw around it so we know how much fabric to cut away. Once that corner is cut away, we'll take our webbing and measure it to size. The written instructions that accommodate each kit will tell you how long to cut this webbing strip. Once it's cut to size, we'll fold it in half, but before we do that, we'll apply double-sided tape to the inside edges of this webbing strip. In the center where we fold this webbing, we'll be placing the stainless steel ring, so do not apply double-sided tape about 2 inches in the center of the webbing. This patch assembly calls for 2 strips of webbing, so we'll apply that to the second one as well. Peel off the transfer tape, revealing the glue, and get ready to baste that stainless steel ring in place. We'll feed the ring through the webbing and place it in the center, and then carefully baste the webbing onto that patch assembly as shown here in the video. By avoiding laying the webbing on top of itself and staggering it like this on the opposite side, we prevent some issues with sewing machines having to sew through multiple layers of webbing and also multiple layers of sailcloth Dacron material. So stagger your webbing like this. It really works well when you come to a sewing machine and sew it then. Turn that assembly over and we'll stagger it also on this side. We don't recommend using a hot knife to seal the ends of the webbing on this application because you'll be sewing through the webbing, and the hot knife obviously will create a hard spot for the needle possibly to deflect from, so don't use a hot knife when cutting this webbing. Now before we baste that final large patch or this assembly to the sail, we'll take it to the sewing machine and sew a few zigzag stitches down each one of the lengths of webbing. This will secure that ring in place. We want to do a little bit of reversing at the beginning and a little bit of reversing at the end. We'll now run a second row of stitches right along that first set that we just put in. If your sewing machine balks at going in reverse, you can always sew forward about 1 inch, lift the foot, move the fabric back again, and sew over it again. That's another good way of doing a reverse if your sewing machine struggles with thick assemblies. We will not show this entire process, but you want to do that to each one of the legs. So you'll flip it over once you're done with the one side and do the same procedure to the 2 legs on the opposite side. Here we are sewing that final leg on the other side of the assembly. We'll not show the whole process. Once that ring's been sewn in place, we'll take it over to the large patch assembly, determine which side gets the glue, and take it to the glue box and use the 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. Kits at this time do not come with the spray adhesive. If you don't have the spray adhesive, you can use the double-sided tape and just baste that patch assembly thoroughly with that. Then we'll take it to the large patch and baste it to that. Be careful when you're basting that you smooth out any kind of wrinkles or air bubbles. If you don't like how the patches are laying, you can always peel them up and reapply them. Now we'll spray the bottom side with the spray adhesive again. If you didn't have the spray adhesive, you could use the double-sided tape. Now we'll take this assembly to the clue corner and baste it to that clue corner. Nice thing about double-sided tape or even the spray adhesive is you can always unpeel this patch assembly and reapply it if you're not happy with the position. Work out all the bubbles. Once the bubbles are worked out and you're happy with that patch assembly, the next step is sewing. On some sails, the patch assembly can get fairly large. We're going to show this in double time just to speed up the process here, but you can see as Deb sews this patch, she needs a lot more throat space underneath the arm of the sewing machine. However, by scrolling or rolling up the fabric, you can get it through fairly small openings of sewing machines without a problem. So you see Deb's rolling the fabric up as she feeds it through the sewing machine. That's all that's required. Do a similar procedure as this and you'll have no problem whatsoever. We want to show the entire process here because it is an art. You'll notice that she'll occasionally bury her needle, lift her foot, rotate the material, lower her foot, and continue to sew. That way she can make adjustments without causing needle deflection issues. You'll see her do it here to this final row of stitches in this patch assembly. Buries the needle, lifts the foot, adjusts the fabric, lowers the foot, and continues to sew. That's the way to do it without having needle deflection issues. Once we're done with this patch assembly, before we baste the entire assemblies together, we'll do the head patch assembly.